April Air has been selling indoor air quality products for close to 70 years, and I bring that up because we had the conversation earlier. This is kind of a new topic, but they're really not new solutions. Bringing them in on the front end in new construction is kind of what's new about it. Typically, as people live in the home, they discover these problems with the home. They're made aware by their HVAC contractor of things they can do to improve that, and then they make those improvements individually. But there's a lot of marketability, as you say, and just doing the right thing to bring some of these in on the front end. And you did bring up defining indoor air quality, because there's not a real rigid definition of it. I'll certainly give you ours, which is really an all-encompassing one. So we try to get away from indoor air quality and talk about healthy air. I think that resonates a little bit more with the consumer. IAQ sounds kind of, just a little more technical, whereas healthy air kind of really gets to the point of what we're talking about. Temperature is a component of healthy air. Obviously, if you're not heating or cooling a home, you're not going to be comfortable at extremes. There would even be health problems associated with that. Humidity control, extremely important. That plays a little bit actually into some of the thermal comfort that you talked about as well. And this is the addition or removal of moisture from the air in the home. A lot of impacts, not only on health and comfort, but also on the preservation of the home. High efficiency filtration, capturing that PM 2.5 and particles smaller than that. That's asthmas, things that aggravate asthma, allergens, even some viruses and bacteria, getting those things out of the air, definitely a key component of delivering healthy air. Fresh air ventilation, I think we're all probably the most familiar with that, and while I agree that there's not really, these things aren't driven the same way that water and things like that are, we do have some codes and regulations that at least manage some form of fresh air ventilation. Now, unlike our neighbors to the north, it's extremely confusing in the United States. Depending on what version of IECC you're under, you could have very different requirements for how much air you need to bring in, how often you need to bring it in. So that's, as we go through kind of good, better, best packages, that is going to play a role in it. Some of us are just responsible for doing more than others because of the way that the code has laid that out. And last, I was surprised you touched on it, but I'm glad you did, radon. Again, very common on typically the resale part, right? When someone's going through that paperwork and the inspection, they'll put that on there maybe to get that checked for and see if they can get it mitigated. Why not do that on the front end and make sure that you talk about the fact that you did it? Obviously, again, not everywhere. There's an EPA map that shows where high radon zones are. There's certainly going to be areas where you're probably not going to encounter it. However, they are starting to realize that EPA map is a little dated, and it's actually very unique to where radon can be. So you can be in an area where there really isn't a lot of radon, but you could have one house that for whatever reason is sitting on a pocket of it. It's very cheap to test now. We have charcoal tests that you can put in the house for a couple of days, and they'll give you a pretty good idea of the radon level at that exact moment. Long-term sensors are a better way of doing it because radon can change by the month, by the conditions that are going on outside. But there really is an opportunity here to start to offer this. And again, in Canada, they put at least passive systems in every home that they build. That's something we could all do, and then if it turns out to be above 4 picolitres, you could put in an active fan and manage that. So that's kind of probably the newest component on the new construction end here is radon, but definitely something worth thinking about, especially if you're in the northern climate zones where this is a little bit more common. So those are the components of it. How do we mitigate the issues or correct the indoor air quality? And there's a lot of different products that do it. Obviously, I have mine represented up here, but there's, of course, a number of manufacturers that make products that do similar things. So these categories would extend to all of those. Temperature, which historically, would have been just a thermostat, a dumb thermostat, something that is giving you, just even a mercury switch is still a thermostat, right? It's just telling you if you're conditioning the air or heating the air. And I would say that's another sensor that we all have in our home automatically, in addition to CO and smoke. We are sensing temperature all the time because that's how our thermostats work. That's the biggest technological advancement I think we've seen in this industry. Our thermostats now are going to start to incorporate other sensors. They're smart, so we can communicate through our phone. We can change our temperature when we're not home. We can turn on air cleaning devices. We can maybe change our ventilation rate if we want to do that. So having a high quality thermostat, whether it's an individual thermostat or it's integrated into another control system in your house, is going to be extremely important to making sure that the consumer is really able to act on the benefits of the products that are in the house. Next is humidification control, which is the addition of humidity. This is the one that doesn't always go over great with builders, to be perfectly honest. They don't love the idea of adding moisture to a home, but it's one of the most common add-ons in an existing home. And that's because as somebody lives in a home, particularly in a northern climate, when they heat that air, it gets very dry, and it's one of the most noticeable things that can happen in a home. Your skin gets itchy, your nose bleeds, your wood floors can crack and check. It actually has an unbelievable impact on the home, the way we feel in it and the way we live in it. So yes, in a new home, when you're very tight, you're going to have more moisture than in an existing home. But if you think about over time, as maybe that home dries out, as some other things occur, adding that humidity, especially in a northern climate, is something that eventually we're going to want to do in those homes. More common, dehumidification, certainly in the southern climate zones, but really anywhere that has a hot, humid summer. Pulling that moisture out of the air, extremely important because you need to prevent the growth of mold. High humidity is also bad for different lung conditions, COPD, really any kind of a pulmonary condition is going to get worse when you have hot, thick, humid air. The comfort aspect of it too, particularly if you travel, as I think all of us, up here do, you mentioned how you feel different in different areas and what you're acclimated to. I think Houston is the most uncomfortable place on earth, not outside, but inside. Because when I walk inside, they have their air conditioning set to 64 degrees, and it's extremely uncomfortable. It's kind of cold and clammy, where if you were managing to that humidity, you could have a higher temperature, say a more comfortable 70 or 72 degrees, because you're not overcooling the home. So dehumidification really provides a huge benefit to getting us more in that comfortable temperature zone instead of overcooling to try to reach it. High efficiency filtration, again, removing that PM 2.5, which I think that's a word that we're all a little bit more familiar with, that kind of came out during COVID, but there were some big articles actually pre-COVID in Newsweek about particulate matter 2.5. These are the ones that get deep down in our lungs, they stay there, they cause issues, and we're starting to see how long-term exposure to these can be responsible for some pretty significant health problems. So trapping those with a more powerful return filter, not the 1-inch one that's on the back of the truck, but something that's more, at least MERV 11, MERV 13, MERV 16, really get up there and start to grab those tinier particles. From the fresh air ventilation side, just bringing outdoor air in the home. I won't spend a lot of time on that because I have another slide that gets a little deeper into ventilation, since I think it's the one that applies to most of us, but that's bringing outdoor air in, increasing in importance because these homes are tighter. And then again, radon mitigation, there's passive systems for that, there's active systems for that. If any of you are following the updates to Indoor Air Plus, version 2 is starting to add some requirements for radon testing and potential mitigation. So if that's a program that you're a part of, radon could become much more important here when they pass version 2. So you want to keep your eye on that. So, what is driving it? Well, as we mentioned, consumer concern is a huge driver of it, particularly post-pandemic. People are more aware of the impact that the air has on their health. They're more aware than ever of the ability to take care of it. I always said I was so excited to see an article about ventilation on the front page of the New York Times. Never thought that would happen. But there's a much deeper understanding of the importance of bringing that outdoor air in, the importance of filtering it, how much we're exchanging viruses and particles when we're all sitting in a room like this together. We need to filter that air. We need to move that air. So the healthy air aware consumer. Healthy home standards certainly playing a role in it as well. The number one driver, though, is still tighter construction. So we're all building tighter homes, mostly driven by energy code. And when we tighten that home up, we trap odors, we trap air, we trap moisture, we create an environment that isn't ideal. We're building better homes for sure and more efficient homes, but now we have to manage some of the negative side effects that come along with tighter construction. And indoor air quality is one of those. While that better controlled environment gives us a lower load on the heating and air conditioning system, it gives us a little bit less control over the IAQ because we have less natural air exchanges to kind of even out the home. Code requirements too. John always forbids me to talk about code, but he's not here, so I'll say it does play a role in this. It shouldn't be the only reason that you do it, but it's certainly, depending on where you're building, code is going to have an impact on what products you need to include in the home. And then Energy Star, Indoor Air Plus, and Net Zero are some of the other programs where they're certainly not necessarily code driven, but if you're building to those programs, they do have some things in them that will stipulate improvements to indoor air quality.
And it should be noted at this point that those 3 programs in particular, if your homes are compliant with a lot of these programs, there are federal and local dollars available to you as builders. One of the roles that we play at BlueSav is helping builders find those rebate dollars there could be up to $5,000 per home available to you as you build new construction. So it's important to note that although indoor air quality is a great marketing tool, it's also not necessarily a cost center. A lot of these services and systems can actually be paid for by federal and local dollars, depending on where you are.
Absolutely, and that's going to be something that I think really helps to start drive ventilation. The 45L tax credit, I think it is.
Yeah, 45L.
Is going to help drive some of these.
Love 45L, and if you don't know what 45L is, come see me. I'll tell you all about it.
So I used ventilation here because we don't have time to go through every single product category, but what I want to illustrate here is that within all of these categories, there's going to be a wide selection of products that manage to that one issue that you have. So if it's fresh air or humidity control, there's not really a one product for all of these. It's going to depend, again, somewhat on code. Do you have to use an ERV because you're in an area that requires balanced? Are you in an area where you could get away just using a bath fan? We never recommend that. We always want to see at least positive pressure in the home, if not balanced, but that's going to be the first thing you're going to look at. What's the minimum that I need to do if I'm offering fresh air anyway? And that's usually a dampered system. So you've got a damper that opens up when there's a need for fresh air. It brings that air in. It's going to dump it into your return so you can take advantage of that high efficiency filter if you have it. Filter that outdoor air before it's delivered to the space. Very affordable way to bring in outdoor air and get some conditioning over it. The same smart controls that would exist on other products exist on the dampered solution so that you can lock out for temperature or RH if you need to have more control over the type of air that you're bringing in. We want to bring outdoor air in, but we don't want it to have a negative impact on the home overall, of course. Fan-powered systems are more energy efficiency driven, so when you have the fan located in the unit, you're able to get more efficient flow than using the central fan of the HVAC system. So you'll see that in code from time to time that the efficacy rate's going to require you to use a power ventilator, and this has its own filter as well as a backdraft damper integrated into it so that you've kind of got all your ventilation control in one box. I'll move to ERV. That's going to be our balanced solution where those two airflows are exchanged and there's some recovery there so that you're not just replacing all this conditioned air with raw outdoor air. You bring those two air streams together and you're able to manage a little bit with an ERV the latent and sensible load of the home, not just send it all back out again. With an HRV, you've got heat recovery. The other product there is a ventilating dehumidifier. These are getting more popular, particularly in very tight homes in extremely humid climate zones. So that air is probably almost never going to be at a humidity level where you really wanted to bring it into a home, particularly a tight home. So dehumidifying it as you bring it into the home can help prevent issues that ventilated air might create. And the particular unit that we have up here can also ventilate the air, or I'm sorry, dehumidify the air in the home as well. So sometimes you need to dehumidify ventilated air, and sometimes you need to dehumidify the air that's just in the home independent of a ventilation call. So again, every product category would have this, and this is why it's so important to have a good relationship with your HVAC contractor and your vendor to make sure that you're choosing the most cost-effective, most relevant solution for your home style that you're building, instead of just saying, well, I'm definitely going to use an ERV or I'm just going to use a dampered system. Let the experts help. As I said, we've all been working on this for 70 years now, so we're happy to share what the best solution is for every home. And it's not what's the most expensive or the newest product. It's what's best for the application that you're building for. So that kind of brings us to a good, better, best, and I hesitate to use that a little bit. I actually had a conversation with some folks yesterday about when you do good, better, best, do they just go, well, I can't afford the best, why would I want anything but the best, I just won't do anything. So how you sell this is kind of up to you. I kind of think it's more, talk to the consumer about what it is that they're trying to solve and give them the best solution for what it is that they have. So if their primary concern is just allergens and viruses, this good package might be more than enough because you're bringing in that fresh air that you need to bring in, you're reducing some of the issues of stale air, and you've got that high efficiency filter that's going to trap the different particulate in the home. If you want to go a step further, you could also manage to humidity in one direction or the other. A humidifier if you're in the north. This probably wouldn't be your better package if you're in Florida. That might be a dehumidifier instead of a humidifier. And maybe you have a UV light in there to control mold over the coil. And then a complete healthy air system would kind of be the best, right? You've got a system that's managing to every single one of those individual elements of IAQ that we talked about on the first slide. That's obviously going to be, that would be the most expensive solution, but even that would vary here. So all those products I have up there, a complete healthy air system might not be all of those products depending on where you're building, your geography, your code compliance. So always keep in mind that these are gonna change based on your needs, your consumer needs, your budget, your HVAC contractor. Work with those folks to understand what the best package is, and then offer that to your home buyers. And last, I'm trying to wrap up here because I think I'm getting low on time. But
you're good. This is your last one. So
we talked about this a little bit. You mentioned it. Are we marketing this well enough? And we're really not. And I think it's because, and I think some of that's on the manufacturers. Honestly, we work closer with you to. We spend all of our time trying to figure out how to sell this to consumers and homeowners. We do a better job of sharing that with you guys so that you are aware of how to talk about it. We've had conversations where they've said, we've tried to bring this on, but our sales guys just aren't comfortable talking about it. Well, nobody in sales wants to talk about something that they're not comfortable talking about or that they can't answer questions to. And as consumers start to learn more and more about this, they might be coming in prepared to have more in-depth conversations about this. So you want to be prepared to answer those questions. And there's, how do we approach those? We had one builder who said he looks at it as the non-structural parts of the home, which I thought was a good way to define it. So this is talking to the customer about the things that they can't see and they can't touch, but that are going to impact the home. And that would be health, comfort, and then the protection of the items that are in the home. And real quick, a way you could talk about that, obviously health, you could talk about pandemic-related stuff. You could talk about reducing allergens in the home and dust. Comfort, you could talk about the odor control that you can get from maybe carbon-impregnated filters. You can talk about the comfort from removing humidity or adding humidity in the wintertime. Protection too, if you're selling a luxury home or a home where somebody might be bringing in a lot of instruments, so there's a lot of woodwork and wood floors, talking about the protection benefits of humidity control could be a great way to broach that subject without, it can be a warranty protector really. Some wood flooring manufacturers have stipulations on the moisture content of the wood and the RH that the home needs to be kept at to preserve that warranty. So that's a way to, this is kind of an insurance on the investment that you're making with these humidity products. And I would say prepare buyers before they come in. I know that there's emails that go out or maybe sheets that you give a prospective buyer that says, when it's time to come to the design center or the model home, here's what we're going to talk about. If you just put IAQ on that sheet so that it's in their mind and you're prepared to talk about it, they'll come in ready to have a conversation about it. And we just have one example here from a builder we work with in Texas who they put a dehumidifier in every home, and part of the emails they send out, they've let their prospective buyers know that they do it because in Houston they believe it's the right thing to do to manage that humidity in the home. So they're putting it on in every home, and they're kind of owning that they're doing it because they realize the best way to deliver a healthy home is to have this product in there. And everybody could do that. It doesn't have to be a dehumidifier, but whatever product you're putting in, talk about it. And the last thing I'll say is talk about ventilation too. I'm partial to that because I'm the ventilation product manager, but I also think it gets kind of a bad rap as this code-driven thing. Even if you're doing it because of code, you're still doing it and you should get credit for it. So if you're putting in any kind of a ventilation system, make sure your homeowner knows that you're doing it and that you're doing it because it's improving their health and the health of the home.